Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. I'm your host, Erin Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, helping driven professionals remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. And today, my friends, we'll be talking about leadership. And do you have what it takes to be a successful leader? Most professionals want to move up into leadership, but does everyone have what it takes to be a great leader? Many coaches and leadership coaches particularly will say that anyone has capacity for leadership. What are your thoughts? I'd love to hear from you. And in your opinion, does anyone have the potential for leadership? Now, if you're just joining in, say hi, say where you're from, say your name, particularly if you're joining in from Facebook land. Please say your name when you add a comment or a question in the chat, because I can't always see your lovely name and I want to say hi and give you a shout out and welcome you to the show. I love seeing your comments and your questions, and I will be answering them as we move along throughout the entire show. And again, today, if you've never seen me before, my name is Erin Urban or Coachy Urban. You can find all about me at coachyurban.com. Don't forget, I have a podcast which airs live every Monday morning. And it is all about career insights, also named Career Coffee Chat Podcast. And I will share with you career growth tips, insights, tricks, how to pivot successfully, change jobs, grow your career, and expand your network, plus a lot of other things. I'm really excited to have you on, my friends, this morning. And today we'll be talking about leadership. What does it take to be a successful leader? And do you have what it takes? So good morning, Karnisha. Glad to see you tuning in from LinkedIn. And again, if you're just tuning in, you're tuning in live from Facebook, please say your name when you add a comment or question, and I will get to it as we move throughout the show. And in just a moment, you will hear the fantastic Fayetteville train that we have in our lovely little tiny town. It is making its debut on the Career Coffee Chat show this morning. So as we move along, please add your questions and comments. And my question to you first, to get us all kicked off, is do you feel, in your opinion, that anyone has the potential for leadership? Now, notice I did not say ability. There's a big difference between potential and ability, okay? And some of the things we'll be talking about today is why do your credentials, education, certification, and expertise don't necessarily prepare you for leadership? Also, why is leadership different than management? And what matters when you want to move up? And what are the aspects of a successful leader? And how can you prepare yourself for leadership? Now, again, what is your opinion? Other than the train, what is your opinion? Does anyone have what it takes to be a successful leader? Does anybody have potential? So I'd love to see your comments and your questions in the chat. But first, let's understand, what is it that keeps some people from achieving leadership? And it probably boils down to some very common leadership myths. Number one of those myths is, I manage people, therefore I am a leader. As probably most of you know, management and leadership are two very different things. Number two big myth on the list is leadership is only for extroverts. This is also a huge myth, and it holds a lot of accomplished introverts back from achieving leadership positions and going for those roles. And number three myth is executive team equals leadership. In America, we commonly refer to the executive team as the leadership team. And sometimes this could be farther from the truth. Number four myth is leadership is being a good manipulator. So if you manipulate people well, you can do well in leadership. That's not the case. In fact, that's a very short-lived perspective. Let's see, somebody from LinkedIn. Sometimes I can't see your name, sorry. It's good morning. Paul, good morning. Glad to see you joining us. So again, if you're just tuning in, my big question for you is, do you feel, in your opinion, that anyone has the capacity for leadership? So let's dive right in. Why is it that your education, credentials, skills, expertise, years of experience don't necessarily prepare you well for leadership? Why is that? Well, quite frankly, if you rely on your credentials, education, expertise, years of experience, etc., to propel you into leadership, chances are you'll probably be a real pain to work for because you may have ignored the most important part of leadership, which actually has nothing to do with any of those things. Leadership has a lot less to do with your hard skills and a lot more to do with what we pathetically call soft skills. And there's nothing soft about them. In fact, if you ignore them, they will have very hard consequences. Not just if you want to move up into a leadership role, but for your career growth in general. In other words, if you do your job really well, that doesn't necessarily mean you know how to people. And don't confuse that with wanting to be everybody's friend, because that doesn't work either. As a leader, you must have what's called people skills or interpersonal skills. That's most important. You don't necessarily have to even be an expert at what you do or the genre you're leading in, if you will. Now, for some roles, you do need to be a technical expert but for a lot of them, actually, you don't have to be perfect in what you do to lead well. Hopefully that makes sense for you. Also, historically, unfortunately, the problem with this is, and the reason we get confused, is historically companies tend to have promoted people who've just been in a role for a really long time. So they've been in a role for a while, and one day people's like, well, you've been here long enough and you do a really good job as an individual contributor. Let's promote you to a manager. Sound familiar? Well, the problem with that is usually several things happen. One of those things is the company loses a great individual contributor and gains a poor manager. So just because we're a great individual contributor does not mean we can lead people. And notice there's a difference between management and leadership, two totally different things. So don't think we can hide behind our expertise, our education, credentials, etc., to lead by influence. Okay? These two things are mutually exclusive. As we're hiding behind our expertise and our credentials, etc., that typically means we cannot lead by influence because we're not been able to personally influence those around us. Now, please don't confuse influence and manipulation. Two totally different things as well. With that being said, why is leadership different than management? And what matters when you want to move up? So let me ask you a question. Do you feel that people should follow you because you have a title? Be honest. Do you feel people should follow you if you have a title? So management is metrics. There's metrics driven and what I call people pushers. You're a supervisor, you delegate, hopefully, and you have administrative authority, hire, fire, decide when people go on vacations, fill out a lot of paperwork, that sort of thing. People do what you say because of your title, and that's about it. Leadership, however, can stand alone, and it does not require a title, in fact, at all. And that's very interesting. You can be an excellent leader and not have a title at all. It doesn't require management level authority, in other words. You're an influential leader. You motivate, you lead by example, you have high EQ or IQ, or EI, depending on how you, EI or EQ. You have influence, you have great credibility, but you don't necessarily have to be a people pusher. You don't necessarily have to be a supervisor. You don't necessarily have to have that title. In fact, what's interesting is the hardest thing to do is actually lead by influence. Before that, the hardest thing to do is lead yourself. That's really hard. So welcome from YouTube. I'm glad to see you on. Unfortunately, I can't pronounce your name because that is slightly a foreign font there, but thank you from YouTube. So we are live on LinkedIn, we are live on Facebook, and we are live on YouTube. So that's brand new as of this episode. So Cornelia says, absolutely not. People should not be able to follow you just because of your title. Thank you for adding that comment, Cornelia. You're right. People don't necessarily follow people just because of their title. People follow people because of who they are. All right. So what's interesting is I believe that this historical quirk, we've been promoting people just because of their individual performance into management, has largely hurt people's ability to lead. Well, let me explain. They've never had to lead by influence alone. Instead, when someone gets thrust into management roles, typically they rely on their title to get things done. And that's not leadership, that's management. Make sense? There's a difference between being a boss and being a leader. So if you hop right into management, you miss out on great opportunities to grow your influence, your credibility, your ability to support people, and your ability to develop that rapport by which people want to follow you. Because if you're taking a walk and no one's following you, oh no, you're out for a hike, I guess. So that's the problem between management and leadership. And one of the problems historically that we've had in this country, particularly about and around, that management myth. You're not necessarily a leader. And it drives me crazy when people refer to the executive strata as a leadership team. Doesn't mean they can lead. Leadership is a demonstration of actions, behaviors, and character traits, not a title. You get where I'm coming from? So what else? Let's just say you want to move into leadership. And what are the aspects of a successful leader, and how can you prepare yourself for leadership? But before I go much further, please let me know if you have any questions. And what do you consider is a major roadblock to leadership growth? So what, in your opinion, is a major roadblock to leadership growth? And please don't forget to tune into the podcast that I have, Career Coffee Chat podcast, on all the major channels, including YouTube, including Spotify, Apple, you name it. And there are like 15, 20 other ones that I don't even know of. So I'm on all the major channels. And don't feel free to share this episode if you think this can help someone that you know in your network. Feel free to share this episode later. And please don't miss out on getting your leadership checklist. There is a link to that checklist in the event description. So what are the aspects of successful leaders, and how can you grow yourself as a leader? Well, first, number one, you need to have a reasonably high EI or EQ. And that's emotional intelligence. Basically, you're relatively adept in your interpersonal skills, and you're reasonably self-aware. That summarizes EQ to a great degree. Amy says, time and competing priorities, major roadblocks to leadership growth. Amen, Amy. You're right on, sister. You're absolutely right there. Time and competing priorities is a major roadblock to a lot of managers being able to develop their leadership skills, in fact, because they're so busy firefighting, they're not able to focus on developing their interpersonal skills, supporting their team, getting to know them personally, etc. They're just trying to put out fires, which is a struggle, and shame on companies to doing this to your managers. Let's see, someone from Facebook said, is it fair to say that a leadership team, let me show you that, is called that because it's desire and intention for the members of the team to be leaders? Yes, and I will also say that one of the reasons we have that personification is a misunderstanding of leadership. Okay, these individuals at the executive strata feel like, well, I'm a leader because I'm here, right? I'm successful. Here I am. Look at me. I'm a leader. No. But you're right in the fact that it's a desire to personify leadership and maybe not an understanding of what it actually takes. So let's see. Roland says, I'm from Kazakhstan. Thank you for joining from Kazakhstan. Late in the afternoon. So this is a good show for before bedtime. He said, if in your country all resources belong to corporations, in my country, president's family is the owner. Yes, it's very much about hierarchical, who you know, very controlled, top-down driven. So different countries have different standards, and leadership, particularly in some countries, is very difficult to wrap our minds around because the examples we've been given are counteract or contradict is everything I'm saying. So, and keep in mind, your ability to be a leader helps you in multiple areas of your life. I'll give you a personal story. So before I woke up and had my career wake-up call, I was all the things I mentioned earlier. I relied on my expertise, my credentials, my education, my years of experience to get ahead and do my job really well. I have fully expected, because I did my job really well, worked super hard, I was super professional and unapproachable, that I would be moved up into leadership. After all, worked really hard, right? That's what you do to move into leadership. No, not really. It just made me a pain in the butt to work with. So unfortunately, I was known as the steamroller. I got things done, and Lord help you if you got in my way. When I embraced leadership, so when I had my wake-up call, which was a bad performance review, and I went through the whole grief period, and my mentor stepped in and helped me out and started teaching me what leadership actually was, I had a big wake-up call. What was interesting is when I started embracing the methodologies and the mindset of leadership, it helped me in all aspects of my life. All of them. I cannot thank that process enough for helping me be successful as a human being. So when we think about leadership skills, it's interesting because I put a poll on LinkedIn earlier today. Non-traditional thoughts about leadership. Do you feel that leadership will help you do things like keep your job, right? Or grow your network, right? Or land a job? Do you feel like leadership abilities will enable you to do that? I'd love to hear your thoughts about that too. So the first thing it takes to be a successful leader is to be reasonably self-aware and have a fair degree of interpersonal skills. Notice I did not say you had to be perfect. Okay, that is not a requirement of leadership, last time I checked. Although I was convinced of that as a young professional, which led me to be a total pain to work with. So the other thing we want to keep in mind is the best leaders are comfortable in their own skin, if you will. So in other words, they have a degree of confidence, not arrogance. And they're okay with making mistakes. They're able to accept imperfections and are willing to work to improve. They don't think they have all the answers. In other words, don't confuse confidence with arrogance. And particularly for my driven professional ladies, don't be afraid to be confident, because it does not necessarily mean that you're being arrogant. I find that some women will hold themselves back in expressing their confidence because they feel like there's a negative connotation to doing that. Now, also, and not stressful at all, well, successful leaders know that they must embody and model the behavior that they expect in their teams. And I'll also share with you that this is one reason why it took me a really long time before I wanted to be in a leadership role. Because that's a big responsibility. That is a big ask for a lot of people. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. And I will share with you, as a recovering perfectionist, that did hold me back a bit. I was like, oh my gosh, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I'm right? So don't overthink it. Just know that we cannot say one thing and do another. Like, team, you need to come in at 7 o'clock every day and you show up at 9. It's probably not going to go over well. So let's see. Here we have a comment. I'm trying to find my mouse. There we are. So promoting an individual contributor is, but not backfilling their role, expecting them to maintain both original position and a non-related discipline management responsibility. So I'm not quite sure what you're trying to say there, but it sounds very complex and not a good situation to be in. So yes, in other words, you're saying promote to management, still do your individual contributor role, and by the way, deal with all the messy people you have to deal with. That's not fun either. So oftentimes companies are their own worst enemy, particularly right now that we're in a very lean economy and we're asking people to wear a lot of hats. There's not much room for people to grow their leadership skills. So what can you do when you are already overwhelmed? Well, what I did was I took my leadership homework home. That's what I read. After dinner every night, I would read through my leadership homework. I'd read my leadership books. I'd watch my webinars, whatever that looked like for me, if it was formal training. I would do that on my own time because I knew good and well that if I did not invest in me, then I was not taking control of my own career growth. So oftentimes we have to invest in ourselves, even if that means carving out a little bit of time to do that. So what's interesting is successful leaders know this, and they know that they can't always expect companies to give them space and grace that they rightfully need to have to be great leaders. And they're being told to be firefighters and having conflicting priorities and not enough time. So it's very, very challenging for a lot of managers to grow into leaders because of that. So the other thing we want to make sure is that the best leaders, okay, the best leaders are adept at supporting their teams perform at their highest level. It's not about us, it's about our teams. Historically, it's been the opposite way. It's all about the leaders and you need to support me and I'll just push, poop down the hill on you. And that's not the way you can get people to follow you. And as we move forward, as we are changing and growing as a culture, and our company cultures are changing, thankfully, this is something you cannot get away with as much anymore. So we can't just push all of our bad stuff on our teams and expect them to support us. What's interesting is the more support we give, so the more we give to people, the more we receive. Just think about it. You've all probably worked for a boss that you haven't appreciated very much. And you've got to ask yourself, would you follow that boss? Would you support that boss willingly on your own volition? Probably not, right? However, someone, if you really enjoy working for, you would probably go out of your way to make sure that they were supported. So it is about those interpersonal relationships. It's not necessarily about how much stuff you know. Now, if you are looking to seek move up into leadership roles, seek that leadership position, what can you do to prepare yourself or grow your leadership skills in general? One of those things is I would encourage you to lead by influence first. So if you've never been in management, lead by influence first. Lead teams that you do not have hire and fire capacity over. Lead projects that require you to influence others. Now, the nice thing is I came up through the ranks of project management, and a large degree of project management is leading by influence. Some project managers embrace that, some don't. Some feel like, let me beat on you until I get my answer. Unfortunately, that doesn't necessarily net you the best results. And I had to find that out the hard way, because that was certainly my thought. My thought was, well, if I need something, I'll just lean a little harder on people and they'll give me more stuff. That doesn't work. When I started changing my approach and working on getting to know people, appreciating people, sharing with people, using different words when I interacted with people, the people that I needed that support from, information from, material, etc., they were more willing to help me in advance of me asking, which was a mind blower for me, because I didn't even know that was possible. So that's the difference between managing someone and leading someone. Okay. So to help you with this leading with influence, what I encourage you to do is become hyper aware of your work style. And your work style encompasses things like, what's your natural communication style? What's your natural listening style, questioning style? How do you receive and infer information? What's your preference there? What's your collaboration style? And most importantly, what is your stress response, right? For me, for many, many years, my stress response was, if I'm stressed out, I'm going to lean harder on everybody and be a really a grumpy person to work with. So that's not very helpful. So empathy is a big part of it, right? You're absolutely right, Paul. Empathy is a huge part of having a higher degree of EI or EQ. And it's absolutely a requirement. But what we don't understand is a lot of us suffer from this misapprehension that we have to be all the things that are an antithesis of leadership. In other words, push people really hard, work really hard, be hard to get along with, be super professional, unapproachable, try to be the best, do everything better than everybody else, overachieve, overcommit, and so on, because that gets us ahead into leadership. It does not. In fact, having that high EI or EQ does. And also, along your path, when you're wanting to develop your leadership skills, get frequent feedback from other people that you work with. This is very important, because you don't know what you don't know. We are blind to our blind spots, but other people are not. So you want to develop your own personal board of directors, or your allies, or your personal support community. Who are those people that you would appreciate feedback from? Are those mentors, people you work with closely? Maybe even people you don't like. They'll be very honest with you in the feedback that you receive for your growth, because our intent and our actions oftentimes don't align, all right? While we drive our credibility, we do not determine it. We do not determine our credibility. Other people do. Let's see, someone on Facebook says, an easy way to think about this is recall how we judge a new boss. Absolutely. Are they competent? Are they trustworthy? Are they here to help us as team members do well, or are they only in it for their own benefit? That's a great thing. Thank you very much for adding that, because it's a great way to consider your own leadership competency. Am I able to do this? Am I supporting people, or am I manipulating them? Am I pulling things out of them? Now, don't be confused with trying to be everybody's best friend, because leadership is not about that either, but it is about competent support of your team. Amin says, it depends on who you work with. Sometimes it takes empowerment. You might need people to lift you up. If you work with opportunists, then you're done. Yeah, so absolutely. If you work with a very competitive culture, for example, sometimes this is a little bit harder to embody. But I would encourage you to do that for your own personal growth, regardless, because what we don't want to do is have other people's behaviors define our own, because that's giving our power away to other people. So hopefully that makes sense. So I'll wrap up here in a few moments. So if you have any more comments, questions, insights, anything at all, please feel free to put that in the chat and in the comments. If you're watching later, please feel free to add your comments or questions. I will be notified and I will get back to them. Don't forget to check out my podcast. You can find more about that on coachyurban.com or any of the major podcast channels. I am on all of them, and soon to be Amazon. Who knew? Amazon has a podcast channel. Anyway, don't forget to check out your leadership checklist that is in the event description. And if you'd like to know more about me, check me out at coachyurban.com. I have a host of courses and, of course, a host of free resources that's available to you via my blog and elsewhere on the website. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to reach out to me directly, you can certainly do that through my website or LinkedIn as well. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you are not already. I'd love to see you, hear from you, see what you have to say. So make sure that you have that high EQ, EI. We're working on our interpersonal skills if you want to be an influential leader, because quite frankly, if you're just managing people, they're probably not only doing what you ask because they have to and the bare minimum, and they will sabotage you at any chance you get. And that's not where you want to be. So also give yourself opportunities to lead by influence. Lead those people that don't really have to do what you say. And if you can lead there, you can lead just about anywhere. And always ask for feedback. Feedback is so important for our growth in general, whether or not you want to be a leader. It will help you understand other people's perception of you, because like it or not, we drive our credibility, but we do not determine it. So this is all for now. Thank you for joining Career Coffee Chat, friends. It's good to see you. Good to have you tune in. Nice to have you join me. And join me next week, because it's going to be a big time show. We will have a recruiter on. Sherry will join us for how to leverage your recruiter relationships. And this is going to be a really big topic. So I'm very excited about that. Make sure you tune in next week. And that's all for now. Till next time.